But product management for deep tech is very different than product management for, let's say consumer goods or any sort of products that have a shorter life cycle and a lower uncertainty when it comes to the science and engineering of the product. So really the product management process that I use with my team tries to incorporate some of that, right? So acknowledges the fact that some aspects of the technology have very high technical uncertainty. Some aspects of the technology still require a heavy dose of research and development. But at the same time, we're at Sandbox and in the organizations I've worked for before, we're not a research organization, right? We're a customer-facing organization. We're a for-profit company. And so there has to be that balance, right?
Welcome to Deep Dive, the podcast where we will explore the ins and outs of managing deep tech products. I'm your host, Ravi Sundaram, and we'll be talking to product leaders about the intricate and innovative process of transforming cutting-edge science and technology into products that shape our future. Join us as we learn from these industry-leading experts on how to turn groundbreaking scientific discoveries into tangible real-world experiences. Today, it's a real pleasure to have Dr. Nadia Carlsten, Vice President of Product at Sandbox AQ. Here, she's responsible for product management across the company's quantum security, sensing, simulation, and optimization efforts. Nadia has a PhD in engineering from UC Berkeley and extensive experience turning emerging technologies into products. Prior to Sandbox, she was head of product at AWS's Center for Quantum Computing, where she helped define the strategy for quantum hardware and helped launch Amazon Braket, AWS's quantum computing service. Nadia has also led commercialization activities at the US Department of Homeland Security and successfully brought new technologies to market in the areas of cybersecurity and machine learning. Nadia is a fellow deep tech enthusiast, and we've had many a conversation delving into the nuances of managing product in this space. Today, we'll delve deep into Nadia's experience and gain insights on how acquisitions could be a potent strategy for expanding product portfolio. We'll understand the intricacies, the do's and don'ts, and potential pitfalls to avoid. Nadia, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ravi. Pleasure to be here with you today.
Really happy to have you and looking forward to the conversation.
Likewise.
So perhaps we can get started by getting a sense of what you do at Sandbox AQ or the current product portfolio. Could you walk us through the various efforts you have going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm VP of Product at Sandbox AQ. I've been with Sandbox almost exactly 2 years now. And one of the interesting things about Sandbox is we have such a diverse product portfolio. That was one of the reasons I really wanted to join Sandbox in the first place. So we have a product that's in the security space. So this is a cryptography management product that helps customers get ready for quantum computing by helping them migrate to post-quantum cryptography. But it does a lot more. It actually helps them with cryptographic asset management, quantum or not. This is such a difficult problem for a lot of network operators. We have another product that's in the simulation space. So this is taking advantage of the most advanced compute that's available today, even classical computing like GPUs, TPUs from Google, and so on, and using quantum-inspired approaches as well as machine learning and AI approaches to do better simulations. And so simulate more complex phenomena, do it more efficiently, do it without trading off accuracy, and so on. And then we have two more products that are very exciting because they're in the quantum sensing space. So quantum sensing is really about using qubits to measure as opposed to using qubits for information processing like in quantum computing. And in that space, we have two products using quantum sensors. So one of them is to do navigation. So the value for customers there is to be able to have an accurate location without a dependency on GPS, which, as we know from looking at the news recently, is very easily jammed or spoofed. So that really addresses the customers who have a need for precise location and who want to not have to rely on GPS anymore. And then the second product in the quantum sensing space is using a similar technology in that it's also quantum sensors to do magnetometry, with software to denoise and calibrate. But it's using it in the medical space. So there it's really using it to get magnetic fields from the heart and being able to use that to make to give insights to the doctors about what clinical diagnosis should be made next. So two very different applications, but there's some commonalities in two different products. So I get to overview and oversee this portfolio of these very four diverse technologies, very different customer bases. But the commonality between the two is really bringing a lot of deep tech to customers and doing it in a way that can be done today, right? These are all very leading edge technologies, but we're trying to bring the benefit of these technologies to customers now.
This is a really good a wide mix of technologies and products into various markets. Given the fact that these are fairly nascent technologies, how do you approach traditional product management functions like prioritizing development or even feature launches? Do you have a particular strategy for that?
Yeah, so I mean, as we talked about, the product management for deep tech is very different than product management for, let's say consumer goods or any sort of products that have a shorter life cycle and a lower uncertainty when it comes to the science and engineering of the product. So really, the product management process that I use with my team tries to incorporate some of that, right? So acknowledges the fact that some aspects of the technology have very high technical uncertainty. Some aspects of the technology still require a heavy dose of research and development. But at the same time, we're at Sandbox and in the organizations I've worked for before, we're not a research organization, right? We're a customer facing organization. We're a for profit company. And so there has to be that balance, right? Right. So acknowledges the fact that some aspects of the technology have very high technical uncertainty. Some aspects of the technology still require a heavy dose of research and development. But at the same time, we're at Sandbox and in the organizations I've worked for before, we're not a research organization, right? We're a customer facing organization. We're a for profit company. And so there has to be that balance, right? Like acknowledging that there's some R&D, but at the same time, always ensuring that we are talking to customers, even if this product is, very futuristic. Let's take quantum sensing for example. We can still talk to customers. We can still get their insight. We can still get their input. And I think that's really the key. So being able to have those conversations with customers, even while we're doing the R&D, has been something that has been super helpful. And I think that's really across different product lines.
So that's a theme that is coming across when I speak to various product leaders in this space. And there is no alternative to getting customer viewpoints, even if you are far out from going to market. How do you approach customers when you don't have a product and you're building the future? Do you paint a picture of the future? How do you go about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's kind of two aspects, which I'll mention, and they're both key because it's very tempting to just kind of sit back and say, I'm going to design this perfect thing, and then I'm going to have the customer conversation when I'm ready to have the conversation. By the time you're too late. Like if you feel comfortable talking to customers because you feel like your product is ready, you're probably too late in the market, or you've probably over engineered some things you're going to have to undo anyway. So I think there's, a couple key aspects there. One of them is being very transparent with the customer about where you are in this process. So not pretending like the technology is here if it's still 5 years away, and being very clear about what the actual realities of the products are, right? Like, so this is what you can do today. Here's what we think we will be able to do in 2 years and 5 years. Here's the long-term potential, but here's what we're getting at in the next few months. So that transparency, that honesty with customer goes a long way to building that customer trust. so that they want to be with you on that journey of research and development, and they're not expecting a fully baked product. So that's one thing that is very important. Um, the second thing is having to invent on behalf of the customer. So with a lot of these technologies, the customers don't necessarily all understand the ins and outs of the technology, and they don't necessarily know what is possible. So in some ways, it's the product manager or the product lead's job to paint that picture, to show them what is possible. And so you have to take some chances, right? You can't, unlike traditional product management for more traditional products, you can't look at market signal, you can't do surveys, you can't really look at other companies that are doing something similar in the space and make tweaks. That just doesn't work. So you have to have a hypothesis about what this product should be because you believe in the potential of the technology. You have to paint that picture. And then you have to do something that's just really hard with human psychology is you have to not get attached to it because it's probably wrong, but you have to
Sure.
paint it as completely as possible, knowing that this masterpiece in your head is going to be ripped to shreds as soon as you start talking to customers, and certainly as soon as you start building and engineering it. So those are the two key things, and they have to be in balance. So you have to do that invention, you have to take those bold steps, but you have to be very transparent that this is the process.
That is such great advice. Being transparent on the timelines and inventing on behalf of customers by taking a hypothesis on what the product could be and not really falling in love with it, really iterate from there on. That makes perfect sense. If moving further on, I think another aspect of deep tech products is the choice that you have in terms of the direction you can take, given the long development cycle. So product managers tend to have to make a lot of strategic choices up front and along the way. Could you share your thoughts on your experience, especially in the quantum technology space, and in particular the topic that we wanted to touch on today? When does it make sense to think of the buy versus make in-house approach of strategy?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So to take the first point on the timeline, it's always really important to show progress, no matter how small. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's very tempting to just do your product management, work very closely with engineers, build this thing, and then show it. It doesn't work really well. I mean, there's plenty of examples of where companies missed the market doing that. It's just not good. Um, so the key part is to be able to demonstrate progress, even if that progress is little steps. So I think of it as uh, incremental pieces of customer value that you can provide at the end of the day, right? So you have this product in your head, and hopefully you validated that there is a value proposition there, and so on. That's the big vision. But along the way, what are the pieces of incremental value that you can provide, and how can you show those pieces? So that means not necessarily building the full product, but maybe just having enough to do a proof of concept, enough to run some sort of problem and show that something can be done, or even just having from an educational standpoint something that the customer can play with and start to learn, especially if it's a new technology. So that's something that's really key that I firmly believe in. So then the question becomes, what resources are needed to deliver those things, and how do you ensure that that doesn't become a distraction, right? Because you don't want to be running two parallel tracks where you're kind of building a real product and then you have these like dummy projects just to have something to show for it. That also, I mean, I'm sure some companies can get away with it, but not really a good way to build products. So there's got to be alignment between the two. So where the acquisition thinking can come in is to help with kind of the larger problem of limited resources, which most product teams that are getting started have to deal with the need to demonstrate value early on, right? So the main question really is, can you deliver something by yourself quicker? Or is there somebody else out there that can help you deliver that value quicker? So that's really the key question. And there's actually two criteria there, right? So one, and I'm really oversimplifying, but like the two things here would be, is this something that you can deliver? Like, maybe this other company or this other team just has unique expertise and you don't have it. So that's criteria number one. And then the second thing is speed, right? So even if you can replicate what they're doing and there's no IP or anything, it's perfectly legal for you to just copy what they're doing. Can you do it in a way that's more efficient that they're doing it, or do they have the advantage of having already done it and being closer to the customer? So those are two main criteria.
I really like what you said about even though it is a long-term product development lifecycle, we've got to deliver pockets of incremental value to customers. I think we've spoken about it in the past, where it also de-risks the customer journey in this technology. So that makes perfect sense. And your strategy of acquisitions is essentially giving you a more efficient route to do that, with respect, because there's always going to be resource challenges when comes to deep tech. And I really like the approach that you articulated.
Yeah. And we should mention there's multiple reasons to do acquisitions, right? So some acquisitions are done purely for strategic reasons. Some acquisitions are done just to acquire talent. Sometimes it's
Of course.
a legal stance to acquire IP that you need, and so on. What I've focused on, what I'm most interested in, is really product acquisitions, right? Where you are not just acquiring business and revenue by virtue of this acquisition, but you're acquiring new product capabilities, either whole product or functionality that you can integrate into your existing product. And you're hoping that that's going to create better value for your existing customer base. So that's a different beast, because you also have to integrate product roadmaps. You have to make sure that you do this in a way that's still coherent for both sets of customers, right? That the product you're acquiring and then the product that you already have.
Absolutely, and not to mention the pool of companies that you could look at becomes smaller, because you really have to integrate with your strategy, which makes it challenging enough. Which brings me to my next question, really. With so much innovation happening globally, how does one go about identifying targets that for the gaps that you do identify in your strategy?
Yeah, great question. So I mean, there's quite a few tactics. Most large companies have entire functions dedicated to doing landscape analysis, looking at market research, identifying who's in the competitive landscape, and so on. So certainly, all those things are good. Um, and I think those things are good in regardless of product or technology. But I think specifically for deep tech, two things that work really well. Number one is actually, again, going back to the customer and really talking to them and figuring out uh, what else are they looking into? Who else are they talking to? If you're building that customer trust and you really have that relationship with them on early stage products where they're actually sharing their needs and sharing what else they've tried to satisfy that need, usually other names will come up of companies, of papers they're reading, and so you have a sense there of what they're looking for. So that's a great source of information, as much as they are able and willing to share. The second piece is obviously being in deep tech. All of our products are very tech focused by virtue of the product. So there's still a lot of research going on. As I mentioned, there's still a lot of technical uncertainty in a lot of these areas that we're interested in. So another way is just to stay on top of what is going on in the development of the technology, looking at who's publishing what, who's actually making advances. Is it still just in academia? Are there startups popping up in this space? Are there larger companies that are also making moves in this space? So following the tech advancement can also be a great way to figure out who is in that space that you might be interested in from an acquisition standpoint.
That's great. It's a what you've advised is a two-way strategy, as in obviously stay on top of the market, stay on top of the technology landscape, but as coming back to, there's no replacement of actually relying on your customers and taking them along with your journey, which uncovers potential partnerships and therefore acquisition targets. That is great to hear. If we play that out further, you have a strategy, you've identified a gap, you've actually found a really nice company which would augment your product portfolio and take you further on your strategy. You've got the resources required to approach and go through with the acquisition. Could you talk us through what happens after that? Because some of the biggest challenges actually are integration, especially if it's a size of the company that you're acquiring is similar to the size of your own company. Could you share some of your experience on that?
Yeah, so you make a great point, Ravi, that a lot of people think that when you close the acquisition, the work is done, right? That's probably only true for, the lawyers and the bankers maybe, but for product, that's actually where the real work starts of having to integrate teams, having to integrate the roadmaps and so on. So ideally, it's better for again product focused acquisitions if the product leads can be involved in the acquisition early on. So I was really, really privileged at Sandbox that I was involved in the very, very beginning. And so what that helps is it really helps you think through the product side of the acquisition very early before the deal even
Right.
closed. So like the last deal we did, for example, we already had a product integration plan months before we closed. So there's
Oh,
obviously some risk in doing that. You might be doing a lot of work that if something happened and the deal doesn't close, you've done work for nothing. But the upside is you're ready to hit the ground running as soon as that deal closes. And that is really, really precious. That can really be the differentiator between a successful acquisition or doing an acquisition and then, losing that momentum and not getting the value you were hoping to get out of it. So starting early, very much key. Then once things close and you can really start working together as a joint team, there's almost two big pieces. One of them is probably as product people, what we think about immediately, right? Like, well, okay, you have two product roadmaps. How do you merge these roadmaps? You have two sets of features and functionality. Which ones do you keep? How do you prioritize? How do you, which ones do you kill from, which side? Um, that's really, really important. I don't want to diminish the importance of that. But that's basically a given. Most people realize that work needs to be done. The second piece that I think maybe is not as obvious is how much depends on the people integration. So everything that I talked about on integrated roadmaps, for example, is going to be very different depending on whether you are bringing the team that developed that roadmap as part of the acquisition, or whether you're just getting a product and a roadmap without the team that built it. My experience with deep tech and especially buying, earlier stage companies is definitely trying to keep as much of the team as possible. If they were foundational in building the product, if they have all of those customer insights in their head still, it's a huge value to keep them around and make sure that they are fully on board with the integration. So a lot of it has to do with also keeping the product folks, both product managers, but also the developers, the engineers, excited about the acquisition, so that they're going to keep building and be just as excited about delivering for their customers post acquisition as they were pre acquisition. Hopefully even more excited. If you don't have that, then the rest is entirely mechanical and it won't work well. You will probably still be able to get some features out. You'll still be able to do all the triage and all of the motions of it, but the value you will deliver will probably be diminished.
That is amazing. To recap, start early to integrate roadmaps, but don't forget the people, because that's where the integration really delivers value, and you get to go quickly and keep the momentum. Really like what you said, that doing that right would not just be that we go the acquisition and the roadmap continues to deliver, but it might actually accelerate delivery if done right. That makes perfect sense, and very valuable advice on that one.
Yeah. And one more thing to say about that is also on the acceleration of product roadmaps. Again, there's an internal side and then an external side to this, right? So on internal, obviously, if you get the people chemistry correct and everybody's very excited and you're doing a very good job at PMs at prioritizing and so on, then there's just an acceleration in terms of the velocity of the development, to the number of features you can release, and so on. And that's all wonderful. But then from the external piece, we have to look at, does it look like there's acceleration for the customer? And that's the ultimate win, is if they are able to get, again, those pieces of value faster, if they're able to solve their needs faster because you now have this strong team, that's the real success.
That is great. Always be working backwards from the customer, I suppose. That makes perfect sense.
Exactly.
Maybe a follow-up on that. Is there any tactical advice you have for achieving that integration of teams? Do you get the teams physically together to have workshops? Do you do something specific?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of getting teams physically together. And we've done it in kind of two different layers. Getting all the teams together, right? Just from a people standpoint, getting them integrated into the culture of the company, getting everybody to know each other's name, learn about who they are as people. So that's really important. That's really step zero of being able to work with anybody. Super important. And then the second piece that I love to do is bringing the product folks together. And so kind of a subset of the larger team, but the people that are going to be making those hard decisions. Like, now that we have one merged product, do we need to reposition the product? What are the most important features? How are we going to position those features? How are we going to message this for the customer so that there's still coherence? So the folks involved in those decisions, and again, that's a mix of PMs, but also lead engineers and designers and so on. Getting them all together. I have a fondness for rooms that have whiteboards on all four sides, and just take a day, maybe two, to just whiteboard all of this out. That usually works much better than Zoom meetings. Doing it in person just builds a lot of trust, and just hashing it out from the beginning, acknowledging you're not going to get out of that product session with all of the answers, but at least being able to put all of the challenges, all of the questions and the problems on the board from day one, and then working from that has been super helpful.
Excellent. So getting together in person and uncovering the challenges and building trust. That's what I took out of that. Extremely.
The worst thing you can do is just, pull up two separate Asana board, the old companies and the acquiring company, and just through a Zoom meeting, like go feature by feature. Like that is the worst way of doing it. It's a great, like if you're getting together as those two teams, in the beginning, it's a great way to just revision of what the product should be in the first place. It really becomes an opportunity to think even bigger about that value that you would be delivering at the end.
Makes sense. Right. I'm going to put you on the spot. You've had successes with many acquisitions. Which one do you think went really well, and what do you think contributed to that?
Yeah, we have had very successful acquisitions. So even just at Sandbox, we've had two already, just in the short lifespan of our company as an independent company. They've both been very successful. Both of them were done with the purpose of accelerating product roadmaps and delivering to our customers faster. One of them was in the security space. So we acquired a company called CryptoSense in 2022. This was a French company. We kind of followed the model that I was talking about before. We try to keep as much of the company intact as possible. The CEO of the ex-CEO of the company is now my head of product for the security team, and
Excellent.
merged the two teams. They've been collaborating really well ever since. And actually, the product that we have now at Sandbox called ActiveGuard is really an integration of what the functions that we got from that company and what we were already building internally. So that's a great success. The latest one that we just closed in January is our acquisition of a company called Good Chemistry. So Good Chemistry is a company based in Vancouver that developed a computational chemistry platform. This is a company that I had known for a while, and I was always fascinated by the fact that they were tackling something very hard, doing computational chemistry. But from the get go, they were cloud native, and they understood the importance of not only leveraging advanced compute, but helping customers leverage advanced compute using the best that the cloud has to offer. So very impressive. And as we were developing our internal Sandbox portfolio, it became clear that there were some synergies between what we were trying to do internally and what they had already done as a good chemistry company. So it was, several months of the process of, again, reaching out to them, having the initial conversation, doing all the diligence and so on. But now we're in full integration mode. So this is the exciting piece. The teams got together in January for that initial meetup and started converging all of the product roadmaps. And what's been really exciting, other than, of course, seeing the teams work so well together, has been seeing how the customers have received this acquisition, right? And overwhelmingly, it was so positive. So as soon as we announced it, I started getting messages from people, not just congratulating on the acquisition, but going, this is great. Now I get it, right? Now I really understand what these types of simulations can do. And so that's been really exciting, just working on that joint messaging, that having customer sessions where we as Sandbox are talking to customers that were good chemistry customers and showing them the potential of now what we are going to do as a joint product, and seeing them be so positive about it. So that's been really, really great, really rewarding. Still always a lot of work to do
Of
ahead of
course.
us. We have so many ideas on how to make this platform even better, but I'm very, very excited and also extremely grateful that so much of the old team, of the good chemistry team, decided to join Sandbox, and we are benefiting from the fact that these experts decided to stay on this journey with us.
Nadia, these are extremely valuable insights for deep tech product managers grappling with such challenges. If I could ask you, if you had the chance to give your past self, as you were starting this journey, one advice, what would that be?
How far back are we going from my past self?
Well, maybe the start of your product journey.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. So when I started with products, I guess my product journey was a little bit atypical in that before I started focusing on leading product teams, I had done a lot of consulting, and so in my consulting journey, I had really focused on managing intellectual property. So I had been really focused on actually the tactics, right? Like everything that we didn't talk about today, the agreements, the negotiations,
Of course.
IP diligence and all of that stuff, which has to be done, but is a little bit outside of the product integration space. So I had done that side. And then in my product roles, it was really about building the product organically. So it was kind of that traditional approach to product management, which is, you write your PRFAQ if you're at Amazon, you write your PRD if you're at a different company, and then it's a matter of resourcing it, scoping all of the different user stories, and building very much inward focus. Hopefully, you're talking to a customer, and that's the external piece. But like the development is very internally focused. So the piece of advice I guess I would have given to my past self is probably starting to bridge those two experiences in my professional life, bridge them a little bit earlier, right? And of course, not all companies do acquisitions the same way. Not all of them
Sure.
have the freedom that I've had here in the last couple of years to actually really do product led acquisitions. Um, but I think just being aware that that was a possibility, right? That being able to build product through acquisition is just as efficient, sometimes if not more, than building everything in house, and that the when you think about customer value, that could really be a way to bring more customer value earlier than even if you have the best engineering team in the world and you're working so well with them.
That's amazing. I think the message that I think all deep tech product leaders, in general, product leaders should think about is at least consider the option of inorganic either technology acquisitions or even product acquisitions in the mix, and not go down the natural route in especially very technology oriented teams where well, what is required, let's build it, which is very natural. And this thing is could be very very efficient and should be in the mix. Thanks for sharing that. Right. This brings us very close to the end of our conversation. Before I finish, I normally like to wind down asking a couple of general questions. Things like a book recommendation that really inspired you, either in product or tech. Perhaps one for my empty bookcase behind me.
Hmm. So on the product side, I'm a big fan of Tony Fadell. So I always recommend the book
Build.
called Build. It's what I love about it is that it's not a product management textbook, but it has a lot of useful tidbits, and it's also very well written. It's funny, and it's a mix of product management and somebody's life experience, really. And so love that book. Always recommend it. I actually every now and then I'll pick it up and just read it again because there's chapters that are more relevant. Like so for me right now, for example, his later life when he sold Nest to Google, for example, and he talks in his books about what a culture shock that was coming from Nest, a very scrappy startup, and then having that hit the Google culture, which, as we know, is very googly.
Sure.
That's a really interesting experience, and reading it now after having done a few of these acquisitions reads very differently than the first time I read it several years ago. So it's a great book.
You're in great company. Marty Kagan recently recommended that in one of his interviews, and he was talking about he found it interesting because he quite liked how he described hardware products and building hardware products in the book. It's on my reading queue, so excellent book, definitely. An emerging deep tech area that you have your eye on outside of quantum and AI that you're deeply involved in.
That one is easy. I've always been fascinated by robotics. And so that one has always been really more of a hobby, something that I've just kept my eye on because I've been interested. But the really cool thing is I've been in AI for a few years, and now that is starting to really intersect with robotics.
Absolutely.
So that's been really, really fascinating to see. And, I can't wait till I have a reason to dive a little bit deeper into robotics from a professional standpoint. But I think that's going to be very disruptive. And by that, I don't just mean, robots that look like human and that are fun companions, although, if anyone wants to send me one of those, I wouldn't say no to having one around. But robots that are also just disrupting industries that are now becoming cheap enough that small companies can actually afford a robot to, have a little bit of a mini factory. I At the NVIDIA conference last week, I also saw robots that are performing surgeries, and these are not brand new. The concept has been a long time, but just the increase in precision, the ability of different tasks that they're able to perform, that's really accelerating at a rapid pace. And that with that interface of AI becoming more and more powerful, I think that's the space to watch in the next 5 years.
I absolutely agree. The application of these AI models in these robots, absolutely right. In industry, as well as I see some very exciting applications in agri tech, for example, and so on. I
Yeah.
think that's some fascinating stuff going on. Great one, great choice of trend to follow. Nadia, this has been absolutely educational. I think you've given us product leaders another dimension to think about, especially for such deep tech products and technologies. I'm sure our audience will get a lot out of it. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Ravi. Such a pleasure chatting with you about this again.
Likewise. If you like that conversation, please subscribe. You could also engage further by joining the deeptech.syndicate Substack and Slack channel via the link in the show notes. You'll be tapping into a network of the brightest minds in deep tech product.